Welcome to a brand new explainer. Today, we're cracking open the pages of our Explorer's Journal to unearth the real, monumental history of the Great Sphinx of Giza. We'll be separating the hard historical facts from the pervasive myths that have been sketched out over the centuries. We're going to trace its origins and even explore the secret tunnels hidden inside the world's most enigmatic statue. You know, when you stand before the Sphinx, you're looking at a relic that feels like it's actively disputing with time itself. The 19th century traveler John Lawson Stoddard really hit the nail on the head when he said it's the sheer, silent antiquity of the Sphinx that thrills us. It has watched empires rise and fall, serving as the stunning, silent symbol of eternity guarding the desert. And what's really fascinating is how people viewed it before the Greeks came along and slopped the name Sphinx on it. Medieval Egyptian Arabic speakers had their own, much more intense name for it, Abu Ilhal, which translates to the father of terror. To them, it wasn't just a hunk of rock. Arabic authors described it as a powerful talisman protecting the plateau from the harsh desert, and some even believed the vital flooding of the Nile depended entirely on it.
All right, Chapter 1, Pharaohs and Origins. Let's look at the bedrock.
So, to understand where it came from, we have to realize that the world's oldest monumental sculpture wasn't stacked block by block. It was actually carved directly out of the Giza Plateau's natural layered limestone bedrock, a layer known as the Mokattam Formation. Now, evidence strongly points to it being created around 2500 BC, but there is a massive, ongoing debate among Egyptologists about who actually commissioned it. Was it Pharaoh Khufu or his son, Khafre? Since there isn't a single contemporary inscription naming the builder, scholars have to analyze things like the alignment of nearby causeways or the artistic style of the Sphinx's headdress just to try and solve the mystery. Just to help us wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this monolith, consider the number 73. It spans a massive 73 meters long from its front paws to its tail and stands an imposing 20 meters high. Try to imagine ancient stonemasons chipping away at a colossal, solid ridge of natural stone to reveal a creature of that unprecedented magnitude. It's honestly mind-blowing.
Flipping the page to Chapter 2, The Dream Stele Prophecy, Buried in the Sand.
Let's jump forward in our journal to roughly 1400 BC. By this time, the Giza necropolis had been largely abandoned, and the majestic Sphinx was completely swallowed by shifting desert sands, buried right up to its shoulders. The legend goes that a young prince named Thutmose IV fell asleep under the shadow of its head, and in a dream, the sun god spoke to him with these exact words, promising him the throne of Egypt if he would just clear away the sand and free the monument. Well, Thutmose kept his promise by digging out the paws and erecting a glowing granite slab known as the Dream Stele. Right between them, he solidified the Sphinx's identity in stone. During the New Kingdom, it was revered as Horum Ahet, or Horus of the Horizon. So it was no longer just a statue, it was worshipped as a powerful, living solar deity. It's crazy to think about, but the Sphinx has actually gone through this incredible cycle of being engulfed by the desert and then rescued, over and over again for millennia. From Thutmose IV unearthing it in 1400 BC to the Romans building a monumental stairway for Emperor Nero in the 1st century AD, all the way to modern excavators like Caviglia and Baraz finally unearthing the chest and clearing the plateau in the 19th and 20th centuries. Okay, Chapter 3, Scars, Chisels, and the Nose. Because the bedrock has softer layers, wind and sand have naturally eroded the Sphinx's body over time. But its face? That tells a whole different story of human interference. Now, we've all heard the legendary rumor, right? The myth that Napoleon Bonaparte's troops blew off the Sphinx's nose with a cannonball during his 1798 Egyptian campaign. But is there actually any truth to that? We can definitively bust that myth right now. Sketches done by Frederick Louis Norden in 1737 clearly show the nose was already gone, decades before Napoleon was even born. In fact, 15th century historical records point the finger directly at a man named Muhammad Saim al-Dahir, who reportedly defaced it back in 1378. And if you look closely at the face today, you can literally see the long scars where iron rods and chisels were hammered in to pry the nose right off. Moving right along to Chapter 4, Hidden Tunnels and Secret Passages. You know, over the centuries, treasure hunters, tomb robbers, and archaeologists have probed the very core of this monument, and it turns out it's absolutely riddled with secret holes and passages. Step by step, they mapped them out. There is actually a hole right in the top of the Sphinx's head. Then there's Paring's hole, which was literally drilled into its back in 1837. There's a major fissure, a natural crack cutting right through its waist, and even a keyhole shaft near the paws, which experts think might be an unfinished tomb.
But my absolute favorite detail here is the story of the Rump Passage. Found near the Sphinx's tail, it was explored in 1926, sealed up with masonry, and then totally forgotten by the academic world. It wasn't until 1980 that it was rediscovered. And how? Because three elderly men who had worked as basket carriers on that original excavation miraculously remembered it half a century later. It is just incredible how living memory preserved a secret that the desert almost swallowed forever.
All right, our final entry, Chapter 5, Fact versus Pseudohistory. Let's look at the debates. Because the Sphinx is so incredibly old and mysterious, it acts as a total magnet for wild theories. First up, we have the water erosion hypothesis. This claims that the deep weathering on the Sphinx's enclosure walls was caused by heavy, prolonged rainfall, which would push its creation date back thousands of years before the pharaohs. However, the broader mainstream archaeological community completely rejects this. They point out that overwhelming climatological, geological, and historical data firmly places construction squarely in the Old Kingdom period. And then there are the more fringe theories, like the Orion correlation theory, which claims an origin around 10,500 BC, or the famous prediction by Edgar Cayce that an Atlantean Hall of Records was hidden underneath the paws. Some even postulate the statue was originally carved as the jackal god Anubis. Now, according to historians and archaeologists, these ideas just lack factual support. Yet they're deeply fascinating to talk about because they really highlight humanity's desperate desire for mystery and a lost magical past. At the end of the day, the human engineering of the Great Sphinx is a proven, magnificent reality. It was carved from the very earth, worshipped as a god, buried, rescued, and scarred by time. But as we close the pages of our journal today, we are left with one incredibly thrilling thought. If something as colossal as the Great Sphinx could be completely hidden by the desert for thousands of years, what else is out there? What else is waiting right now beneath the golden dunes, just waiting for a future explorer's spade?